Well, thank you. I was just taking a deep breath. I wasn't waiting for applause. I'm reminded of a time early in my career in the late winter of 1993. I had just finished a stint in the DuPage County State's Attorney's Office, and I had been offered and accepted a job at a respected downtown Chicago law firm. And I was living my dream, if you will. And because I had so much experience as a prosecutor, the firm started to take on more criminal cases. And soon I found myself at 26 and California Street, a far cry from DuPage County. And I was in the hallway at 26 in California, and this is before they cleaned it up and spruced it up for the R. Kelly trial. And before it was renamed for the renowned Judge George Layton. One of the things that happens with all criminal defense attorneys is that you learn that because of the sheer volume of cases, courtrooms tend to belong to prosecutors and public defenders. Private defense attorneys tend to find their way into the hallways to talk with their clients, to talk with one another, to prepare witnesses and talk to witnesses. And so I'm in the hallway with the client, and the hallway at 26 in California, as you might imagine at that time, was badly in need of a makeover. Not well lit, kind of dingy, and I'm talking to my client. And as I stand here now, I can't remember who my client was because I can only remember the client of another lawyer. And what got everyone's attention is that the lawyer was screaming and yelling at his client at the top of his voice. He said, not only are you a heroin addict and a burglar, you are a liar and you are a flipping con man. And I'm not going in that flipping courtroom with you because this is the third time I've been here and you told me you were going to have my money and you don't have my money. I'm not going in that courtroom with you. In fact, you go in that courtroom on your own and you go to prison where you belong. And I'm new to this. You know, I've been in the courtrooms in a more subdued county. And the attorney turns and he starts to walk away towards the elevator. And as we're all watching this drama play out, the young man who appeared to be about 18 or 19 years old, appeared not to be very healthy, looked sickly, in fact. The lawyer, he looked like he needed his legal fee too. And the young man says, all right, man, all right. I got your money. I got your money. He reaches in his pocket and he pulls out a wad of cash, the rubber band wrapped around it, and he holds it up to his lawyer and he smiles. And the lawyer looks at him and he turns around and he walks back to him. He puts his hand out, he accepts the cash, he puts it in his pocket, and they walk into the courtroom together. And so as I watched that drama play out, I surmised a lot and I learned a lot. I surmised that this young man had been stringing his lawyer along, that he was the heroin addict that his lawyer said he was, that he didn't want to part with the money that he might need to get his next fix, and that if he could get his lawyer to show up one more time and not have to pay him, that's what he would do. I surmised also that from that moment forward, as a criminal defense lawyer, I would get my fee up front. So let's fast forward now 19 years. As we fast forward 19 years, I am at my daughter's high school graduation. And my daughter attended this beautiful school in South Naperville called Neuqua Valley High School. And Neuqua Valley High School, I won't say is nestled in the southwest suburb, southwest corner of Naperville. I'll say it dominates the area. And I made a very hard choice looking at a number of career options and decided that I wanted to live in a community that is literally 5 blocks away from this school because that's where I wanted my kids to go to school. I figured it would get my kids into the best colleges, and I could stop paying some of that private school tuition. And so this is another view of the high school, and I'll tell you that it is the school that Jesse Jackson spoke of when he decried the disparity of money that goes to Chicago public schools as opposed to suburban schools. It is a school that was featured on the Oprah Winfrey Show. It is a school that puts to shame from a campus perspective the small college that I attended. And it is the envy of many small colleges all over the country. And so I find myself in this place. It is the graduation ceremony of Neuqua Valley High School. 1,000 kids, a lot of happy families. But there's something else in that picture. In that picture are 8 kids who didn't make it to this graduation ceremony from their freshman years in high school. 4 of those kids died of heroin overdoses. 3 of those kids died of heroin overdoses within a 7-month period of time after their junior year had concluded and before their senior year's graduation rolled around. And that was very sobering. And you'll see in the top, at the very top, the Jumbotron that we see at sports games that we go to. On the Jumbotron, here in the Convocation Center at Northern Illinois University, and you need a facility that size to actually have the graduation, there was a photo montage of all of those kids, all 8 of them. Music playing, a very emotional moment, a very emotional time. And so I've now shared with you 2 stories, both of which seemingly have nothing to do with one another, and at the same time they have everything to do with one another. Because heroin and opiates, they can make a person a robber, a burglar, a thief, a liar, a con man, every kind of SOB that lawyer called his client. And it can also rob young people in the most influent and most affluent of communities and neighborhoods of the great futures that lie before them. And so this is the 2 things that really caused me to reflect on where we are as a society and where we are in the law and where we are in criminal law in dealing with heroin addicts, dealing with drug addicts, dealing with people who have these issues and dealing with people who have these problems. And so in 1994, Bill Clinton signed the Omnibus Crime Bill, known as, and part of the Omnibus Crime Bill was the 3 Strikes Law. And the 3 Strikes Law pretty much said that if you were convicted of a serious felony offense, a violent felony offense, after having been twice convicted of felony offenses in the past, including a drug offense. A drug offense could be one of the predicate offenses that could cause someone to be sentenced for life. The states followed suit. States began to pass all kinds of mandatory minimum prison sentences, laws for all kinds of mandatory prison sentences, and states began to take discretion away from judges and say, if they have this much, if they have this kind, they must serve this amount of time. Which leads us to what? It leads us to the over-incarceration of America. We in the United States of America have seemingly a love affair with the prison system. We have a love affair with incarceration, only because we believe that in certain circumstances, no, we believe in too many circumstances that it is the appropriate sentence. And so, of all the industrial nations in the world, of all of the first world countries of the world, we far exceed every other nation and most of them collectively. I won't bore you with all the numbers, but we send people to prison, and the prison system does not have the resources to do what it needs to do. And so what you have here is a model that's broken. What you have here is a model that's outdated. What you have here is a model that's not mimicked anyplace else in the world. I stand here now and I see the signs here that say the future is now legal services. When I am finished speaking, you're going to hear some thought leaders in the legal profession talking about all the highest end technology and all of the things about the legal profession to be optimistic about in the future. Yet, as we look at criminal law in the United States of America, and even in the state of Illinois, as you look at criminal law, we've not moved very far. The words draconian apply. The words outdated apply. And so the winds of change, I say, are afoot. You see here a picture of a gentleman by the name of Michael Botticelli. Mr. Botticelli, and I have to read it because is the Director of National Drug Control Policy, otherwise known as the Drug Czar of the United States of America. Mr. Botticelli sees things in a very different way because Mr. Botticelli was an alcoholic. Mr. Botticelli dabbled in cocaine. Mr. Botticelli was a marijuana smoker. Mr. Botticelli was so intoxicated one night that on a highway turnpike, he was involved in such an horrific accident that a judge gave him a choice between prison or getting treatment. Guess which one he chose? He chose the treatment. And so he sees the criminal justice system, and especially addiction, through a different lens. He sees it a different way. He has a different mindset about it. In fact, Mr. Botticelli often speaks. He doesn't like being called the drug czar. He said that the drug czar, the very name itself, conjures up these draconian approaches to drugs, the use of drugs, the abuse of drugs, and addiction to drugs. He prefers to be called by his title that is too long for most people to remember. But Mr. Botticelli brings a mindset that is a refreshing wind of change. Recently, you heard Bill Clinton, who was the one who passed the 1994 Omnibus Crime Bill, say that it was a mistake. He said, "We cast the net too wide. We had too many prisoners without enough money to educate them, train them for new jobs, and to increase the chances for them to be successful when they're released. We left too many people in jail without enough money to rehabilitate them. We wasted too much money locking people up who do not belong in prison." If you could imagine, and as I see Bill Clinton make this reversal, I think it's convenient that the timing of it is while his wife is running for president and he's being asked this question. And I almost see him wagging his finger as he reverses tide here. But this is what Bill Clinton says, and although it may be self-serving, I would go so far as to say that it's honest, it is a truthful dialogue, and it's something that needs to be said, something that still needs to be, it's an approach that needs to be undertaken. And so there are so many more winds of change in play, so many more that are so encouraging. In fact, I've listed a few here, and we see it on the federal level as judges now are getting more discretion to deviate from the sentencing restrictions that they were once under, from the federal sentencing guidelines. We're seeing now drug amnesty programs, and specifically we're seeing heroin amnesty programs where people can actually walk into a police department, bring their drugs into the police department, surrender it, and not be concerned about being arrested, about being charged, about being taken to jail. And in fact, the amnesty program in Naperville, Illinois, of all people, I guess, and they announced this program just in February of this year. They must have heard what my speech was going to be about today. But the Naperville Police Department will actually receive those drugs from you and take you to a facility for treatment. Also, I'm really encouraged by a program called ARI, Adult Redeploy Illinois. And Adult Redeploy Illinois really takes advantage of, and the program is first designed for people who have 2 feet in prison. And what I mean by 2 feet in prison is there is not a judge likely who wouldn't send them to prison, but everything about them says that maybe they don't belong in prison, maybe resources in the community, maybe jobs are available, maybe family members who are helped. Maybe if they have this kind of strong intervention, they can avoid returning to prison. And so it's very involved, it's very engaged. They're in courtrooms with, well, every county is different, but in Will County, for instance, they see the judge once a week. The treatment facilities are being monitored and are in constant cooperation and participation with judges. Judges take off the robe, come off the bench, sit in the courtroom, talk with these people, work through these life issues with these people, attend their graduation, so on and so forth. And then, of course, the drug courts are not new. They've been around a long time, but oftentimes people are not admitted into drug courts for the simple reason that drug courts the people who administrate drug courts want to be successful. They want to continue to get grant money. They want to keep their success rates high. And so that means that oftentimes the people who need to be admitted to these programs the most are denied and declined the opportunity to participate in the drug courts. You have the mental health courts, and the mental health courts and the addiction courts, they often go hand in hand. Too many people who have mental health issues are also self-medicating, and find themselves addicted. You have veterans courts that have and deal with the same problems. There's so many veterans who are dealing with addiction and heroin addictions in particular. I'm still, and I remain distressed by the fact that many of the state's attorneys will actually not allow people into their veterans courts on DUI cases. And veterans, I think sometimes, and I've said many times, that the special interest groups relating to drunk driving should not be chosen over our veterans when they can benefit from these courts. So, thank you. So what do we do now? I say that the first thing is that we admit that America has an addiction to prisons. We have an addiction to prisons. In any 999,000 step program, the first thing you do is admit that there is a problem. And in America, we have an addiction to prisons. The second thing is that we have to realize that addiction is always much closer to our home than we think. And that's the story of Neuqua Valley High School in the 2012 graduating class. It's always closer to us than we think. We release people from prisons, we release people from incarceration, and we've made them no better. If you could imagine going into a hospital and you have been diagnosed with stage 2 or stage 3 cancer, and you spend a significant amount of time in the hospital, and you come out of the hospital with a kidney transplant and a liver transplant. Well, the only thing that's happened to you now is that you have 2 more scars and your cancer has gotten worse. And I submit that incarcerating and warehousing the issue of heroin addiction is just what happens in that situation. And there must be a redistribution of funding. Everything that we're talking about here right now is all about money. It's all about funding. Programs exist or they don't exist. And we pour the money into the prison system. Legislators, prosecutors, judges just have to be more willing to reevaluate whether or not they're feeding the right beast. I'm suggesting that in many of these cases, prison is just the wrong beast. And so that leads me to a final question. Is it better to be tough on crime, or is it better to be smart on crime? And a prison official said a few days ago as I watched the closing of a program about prisons in other countries. They're nothing like the prisons in America. The recidivism rates are much lower. People just don't return. The addiction issues, the mental health issues are addressed. They're able to find jobs and go in and out of the prisons and so on and so forth. And when asked about such a system, tough on crime, smart on crime, which one? And sometimes the answer was that I'd rather be smart on crime, with the understanding that sometimes smart on crime means more lenient. And somehow we have to get comfortable with the fact that smart on crime means more lenient, but may mean better for our communities, may mean better for our schools, may mean better for our students, may mean better for our communities, may mean better. And I pray and I hope that that mindset becomes the future of criminal law in the state of Illinois and in our country. Thank you.